You can legally avoid the tax system forever by doing this. You make money, you invest all the money you make, and then you borrow against the investment that you had to use to pay for your day-to-day. And if you do this properly, you'll be able to avoid the tax system forever.
All right, he's definitely oversimplifying it here. Let's see, how could you actually legally avoid the tax system forever? Okay, let's follow this plan and see what he's getting at, because I do think a lot of this is to make you feel a little bit like you're an idiot and what you're doing is dumb and you should follow this advice. Now keep in mind, there are people like Trump and Rich Dad Poor Dad author that do this, but they are in a lot of debt and they actually technically don't make a lot of money. Now, the first step is, he's saying,
Number one, you need to have a business, because what a business will allow you to do is turn your personal expenses into tax deductible business expenses.
Number one, you need to have a business. That is true. It's like tax law is to stimulate the economy, and the only way to really stimulate the economy is through business, right? So let's just follow the framework here. All right, Mr. You want me to have a business, so I'm going to do a business, right? Okay, that's step one. I'm going to get a business, right?
What a business will allow you to do is turn your personal expenses into tax deductible business expenses.
Now he's saying you can turn your personal expenses into tax deductible expenses. You really can't do that. So think about it. Like, I think what he's getting at here is there's going to be some expenses that might be part of your personal expenses that you can take in part, but to just say, oh, I'm going to deduct my mortgage or my rent, all of these things are going to be now tax deductible in my business. This guy clearly doesn't read any tax court cases. That is, it's frivolous. The IRS will just throw it out. So you definitely don't want to do that. Now, what he's probably thinking is, oh, your 8829 form is where you can do home office expenses, right? So you might have mortgage interest, or let's just say rent, utilities, and then maybe some other maintenance costs, right? But the thing is, you can't take the full 100%. It's based on the square footage of your home office, right? And it's not very much, right? So let's just say it's 10% of your entire living quarters is going to be tax deductible. If this was 10K in total expense, then I can take 1,000 of that. Woohoo. Okay, you're able to deduct $1,000. But if you're making 100 grand, that's not really going to save you a lot in tax. So, but he's making it sound like, oh man, you can write off all this stuff. You can write off your car. It's like, well, if your car's parked in your house, the IRS is going to scrutinize that. So nice try there, buddy, but can't really do that. So let's take a look at some of the other things he's saying.
Number two is, once you earn the money from your business, don't spend it. Instead, invest that money into assets.
Okay, now he's saying, now you start earning money, don't spend it, you need to start investing. Okay, so let's just take a look at that. Let's just say you make 100 grand, right? Okay, if I made 100 grand, well, thanks to his tip, I now make 99, right? So I have a 99,000 in net income. Well, he's saying don't spend it. Okay, well, how am I going to live, right? So I have to use some of that money. But again, let's just say this is a venture where you don't have to spend it because you have a spouse that makes good money. So this is, now you have 99,000, okay? So he's saying invest it into assets. Well, if you invest it into, like, I think he said invest it into crypto.
Into assets like real estate, into assets like stocks, even assets like crypto.
Okay, well, that's not going to save me on taxes. Stocks will not save me on taxes, right? Because I've earned this income. So that's not going to work. Crypto is not going to work because I'm just moving. I've earned this income. So this is earned income and I have to pay tax on it. The only thing, now he does say one thing that's right. Real estate. Real estate, yes, you can potentially write off. However, if it's a long-term rental and you're not actively involved, meaning you're not putting in material participation, and that can be up to 750 hours. It is passive. So you're not going to be able to write it off because this income right here is active, right? So it's active income. And a rental traditionally would be passive. So let's just say you had 20K in losses from your passive rental. Even if you were actively involved, you could write it off. But most often a long-term rental would be disallowed. They would say, nope, you can't take that. So that's not going to work. But you could do a short-term rental. So short-term rental, and if you meet the material participation and average stay is 7 days or less, then yes, that's where we can actually save some money on tax. But you have to also remember, easier said than done, right? So if I were to invest, okay, let's say I didn't spend my 99,000, right? And I wanted to get a short-term rental, and that short-term rental cost me, let's say it cost you 500K, right? Well, a rental property, we have to put 25% down. So that's going to be 100K. Not quite there, buddy. But let's just say I get some other money and now I have 100K. So 100K, well, now what I'm going to do is do a cost seg to depreciate that property, right? So let's just say we're able to get the full down payment amount in depreciation. Then yes, in that aspect, we can zero out our earned income. Boom, and we're golden.